I can't be looking at you like that when we start the video.
Okay. Greetings and salutations. I'm Madison, and today I am joined by my brother Darian. We are going to be talking about the fashion of the 1940s film Casablanca. Darian will also be posting a video about Casablanca on his channel, Stories by Darian. I will be leaving a link to his channel in the description box below and a link to his video in the cards above. There are two interesting things about the fashion in Casablanca. The first thing, I think it's very interesting that the men's fashion is just as iconic as the females' fashion. The design of Humphrey Bogart with the trench coat and
the white tuxedo.
Everyone
remembers the white tuxedo.
Everybody remembers the white tuxedo. Everybody remembers the trench coat and the fedora at the end. His costumes are just as iconic, if not more, than Ingrid Bergman's.
Which is unique.
Yeah, very rare. Also, this film is a wonderful time capsule for 1940s style. There's a lot of turbans, big sun hats, dainty floral dresses. All of those were very big in the 1940s, and this film really helped capture a lot of different international styles, as well as just generic styles of the 1940s.
And the variety was not just for variety's sake. Everything was done to support the story, showing the different classes represented by the different outfit choices, the different locations people were from the world, all coming together into this chaotic location, this kind of imprisoned location looking for freedom.
The costume designer was the Australian costume designer Ori Kelly. The amazing thing is he was rather limited in creating his costumes because it was World War II. He couldn't get expensive materials or flashy things like silk, so he heavily relied on styles from other places and making styles that fit the location, which worked out in his favor in the end because it feels so immersive to have, say, Ilsa Lund wearing all of these whites and creams and golds and all those more neutral colors that really fit with actually being in Africa.
What material did they make all of the costumes out of?
Most of her costumes were made out of natural fibers like cotton, and I believe there was some linen suits going on for the men. Some of the costumes, I do believe, were either studio costumes or the actual actors and actresses' costumes. That was quite often done. Humphrey Bogart's ring that you see him wear in the film was his own ring, and the watch that you see him wear in the film was his own watch.
That really reinforces the realistic feeling that these are real people. All the costume choices never feel like they're just slapped on. They feel like these people really wore these things.
And Ori Kelly was very well known for making costumes that didn't just hang on top of the people wearing them. He was known for being very particular, an excellent designer to bring out the best qualities of the person wearing it and make it an experience to enhance the story.
Exactly. It would be too easy to look at a movie and say that fashion is unimportant from one hand. It would be too easy from a fashion designer's perspective to say, I just want to design things that look good and not care about reinforcing the story. But Ori Kelly was excellent in his choices of costumes for reinforcing whatever mood, whatever particular needed to be communicated non-verbally in the story.
The director, Michael Curtiz, often preferred using very sharp whites and contrasting very dark blacks for shadows and other film effects. Ori Kelly took this in mind when he was designing the costumes for both Rick and Ilsa. At the beginning of the film, you see Rick with his sharp white blazer and that deep black bow tie. No one has a jacket quite like Rick's. It's very iconic looking. Also, throughout the film, until the very end parts of the film, Ilsa is wearing several white outfits. At the beginning, the first time you see her, she has this beautiful long white evening gown. When she goes to meet Rick, she's wearing this bright white coat. And then in a marketplace scene, you see her with this white dress that has black stripes and white accessories.
But the use of contrasting colors weren't just for the visual aesthetic. They were very much used to reinforce the theme of good versus evil,
right,
not just in the story at large, but for each individual character. Particularly noticing it in Elsa's costume in the market scene, like you pointed out, how she is mostly a good character, but after rekindling her relationship with Rick, she is struggling between her personal desires and this ideal she's working with her husband. The whole aspect of this film is that it feels very real, not quite documentary, but it feels very real. You can empathize with these characters, and if Elsa had been wearing more extravagant clothing, not only would you have not quite believed that she was a refugee, but you would be more likely to view her as a superhuman character or some highly stylized character, not really empathize with her struggle as something that you yourself could be going through.
Exactly. While Elsa's costumes are quite lovely, it would make sense that she wouldn't have extravagant clothing, and Ingrid Bergman herself requested that she would not get the Hollywood glamorous makeover. She wanted to be very natural and very much herself. For this film, fantasy would be just a tool to emphasize the reality. I mean, some of the sets were not real buildings. The airport was Van Nuys Airport. They didn't actually go to Africa to film the shots. So sometimes fantasy works just out in the open, but sometimes fantasy can aid in reality, and costumes are very good at doing that. They're a subtle way to communicate storytelling without speaking a word, without taking up time.
So many characters are introduced so quickly. It would be a temptation to try to include too much dialogue for characters that are basically just there to help establish the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But a very specific use of the costume helps get the supporting characters to do exactly their purpose and no more.
Exactly. There's this one woman with this beautiful dress. It's sort of a woven sleeve
The
on
one
it.
selling the diamonds.
Exactly, the one selling the diamonds. She comes across to me like some sort of royalty that is escaping Europe and has to sell off her diamonds, just by the way that she's dressed, by the way that she communicates, and obviously the fact that she has diamonds. But little characters like that, there's a very cute German couple that is moving to America, and he has this very little bit old-fashioned looking three-piece suit on with round small glasses, and she has a rather old-fashioned looking floral dress and this big hat that really suits her age of being a little bit older.
But what stands out to me is that they didn't overdo it, because on the flip side for that one, it seems like the temptation would be to overdo their quaint old world costume and actually work against the mood you're trying to establish
Yeah,
by doing that.
they could have thrown her in a dirndl and him in 𝓜𝓮𝓭𝓲𝓪 or something, but it would have just...
taken away from the reality.
Yeah, exactly. These weren't supposed to be costumes, they were supposed to be kind of capsules from each person's background. In the gambling room, you see some very wealthy bankers, and this woman has this huge diamond bedazzled turban. There are several women that have these very beautiful jeweled turbans, and there's also a few Oriental women that have these beautiful long sarongs on. Just, it gives that wonderful international feeling without screaming, "We're trying to be international!" Specifically in regards to fashion, like we mentioned, it's very immersive, but also I like the variety of styles and the little details that are put in throughout the film. Like at the beginning, there are two people that you see just for a few minutes. They're obviously tourists, and the man is wearing this fantastic zebra print tie that he obviously bought for the trip. And they never even say that they are tourists, but the lines that they were given, the way that they were acting, but most importantly, the way that they were dressed, really enhanced the characters and gave them so much more of a backstory without having to waste time saying that they were tourists.
But it was so important to put them in there and make it clear by their costume choices that they're tourists, because it's kind of how you insert the audience into the perspective of Casablanca.
Exactly.
From a tourist perspective, just looking at it at first for its exoticness before being caught up in the real-life struggle that's going on.
Another person in regards to refugees that I think it's important to talk about is the French girl that you meet in Rick's cafe that is sort of thrust aside by Rick. She obviously was very French, very stylized. Again, a character that you get to know in just a few minutes, just by how she reacts to Rick and the other people around her, but also by how she's dressing.
And that first impression of her is so important because, as with all the characters in the film, the first impression makes such a difference because they're coming in and coming out of the story so quickly that you wouldn't be able to get any bearing on these characters if you weren't able to read non-verbally who they are and what they're about.
I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to tell us what your favorite parts of Casablanca were, what your favorite costumes were. We'd love to hear what you like best about Casablanca. Please also remember to check out Darian's video and to subscribe to his channel. He has a lot of wonderful videos that I'm sure you will enjoy as well. Thank you so much for watching.
Hi, I'm Darian from Stories by Darian. Today we are going to be introducing our sister first.
The costumes were all designed by costume designer, which is why they say costume designer, that's why it's called that. Okay.
He designed the costumes.
Did he?
Yes, he did. Rory Kelly. Obviously a very American sounding name.
He was Australian.
Obviously a very Australian sounding name.
Okay, let's try that again. For both Rick and for Ilsa. You can see that in... I'll cut it!
About how Casablanca...
You forgot to close the door. Don't forget to stop the footage.
Not just you... That didn't sound right. She's working with her husband.
Yes.
Michael Curtiz.
Michael Curtiz.
By the director, Michael Curtiz.
Director Michael Curtiz. Michael Curtiz. Stop it. So important having
say your last line again, please.
I don't remember what I said. Just
Just
say it. Did you want to talk a little bit about Rick's Cafe and some of the details about the actual building and set?